Why did you start blogging? What was the thought behind that?
So actually, when I was working in the bank, so my first blog, I guess let's Tarantino it, let's back it up and then see how we got here. That's what I would
Yeah.
call it. My first blog ever, when I worked at a summer camp, we had internet and I had a laptop from college. So I always brought it with me. And I was the office manager for that last summer. So I was in the office and sometimes we were really busy, but then we'd have downtime in between. And I'd pop open my laptop and I was reading all these blogs and I was like, I could do this. I started my own little personal blog and I tried a few different other blogs along the way. I was reading all these personal finance blogs, mostly by like young women my age that I totally had blogger crushes on. All these people are writing about how they're getting out of credit card debt. I've never been in credit card debt. I have a finance degree. And when I left my job at the bank, I thought a couple of weeks ago, I was approving mortgage loans and credit card applications. I should be the one writing about personal finance. So I took
Mm.
those experiences I had on my other blogs and started narrowbridgeadventures.blogspot.com. And that evolved into what is now personalprofitability.com. I was reading these other blogs. I thought, I can help people with this stuff. I know this stuff and I can share my journey as I learn and explore different financial topics. And here,
Your experience in banking, corporate finance, how did that play into personal finance, and what gave you the perspective that you found that you thought needed to be out there?
I saw the good and the bad of people's struggles with finances. I saw inside people's bank accounts, some of the most private stuff to a lot of households. And along the way, I also had incredible training. I learned all the ins and outs of all these parts of banking and credit card processing and business banking and fees and so on. And that gave me a really strong foundation to launch that blog.
What has been like the path of your blogging?
I learned a lot about how to monetize a blog. And as the financial side grew, I started getting sponsored posts and we did things back then we don't do anymore, like sponsored links and all that. But over time, those sponsorships and things started to add up. And I was like, wow, I'm like covering my weekend bar tabs every month, going out with my friends on Fridays and Saturdays. And in my 20s, that meant something. That became a growing part of my income. And I started thinking, wow, I wonder if I could make enough to cover my rent or my life. And at Ignite FinCon, I was the host. I said, if anyone out there needs freelance writers for your company, come talk to me. I'd love to work with you. And someone came up and talked to me. And that was my first big corporate client, a little company no one had heard of at that time called Betterment. I made 40,000 in revenue on the side between my blog and the freelance writing. And I was also doing a little bit of freelance WordPress design development stuff. This is what the average person in Portland makes per year. Obviously, I didn't want to be average. I wanted to do more than average, and leaving my job meant a big pay cut and a big benefits cut. But when I saw that 40,000 number, I was like, wow, I could probably really make this work. And if I'm doing that in 20 hours a week, imagine what I could do if I went full time. So that was how it grew to a full-time income. And yeah, today, personal profitability, I don't add a lot more to it. I was burning out on the podcast a little bit. I was doing an episode a week. Said I'm going to take a 2-week break. I took my dad to Israel. He was sick with prostate cancer. We knew it was not something that could be healed from, recovered from. And we had such an experience together. It was great. When I got back, I reassessed all the different parts of my business and my money and what was working and what wasn't. I thought this podcast, I really love it. And I learned a lot doing it, but I wasn't really making any money from it. It was more of a labor of love.
What was your first action that you did when you started full-time for yourself and lost your benefits?
Affordable Care Act, healthcare.gov. People love him, people hate him. I know there's controversies, but Obamacare is what allowed me to leave my job and become self-employed. It's still an adjustment. Every month, $2,500 a month hits my card. I'm like, oof, that hurts. Healthcare is not important until you need it. And I do take some medications. I have some things. That was the hardest part. Then once I got that all figured out and the income started to catch up to what I really needed it to be, we had a lot of savings when I quit the job. I wasn't going to just jump without a net. I already had the income from freelance clients. I had a huge savings nest egg. When we sold our house, we put that in high yield savings until we bought our next house here in California. So we had, I don't know, 10 years of expenses and saving, something crazy like that. It was a lot of moving pieces, but it did work out.
you took your experience as a computer techie and mixed that with freelancing and came up with a freelancer dashboard. Was that based on the problem that you were facing that needed some kind of tech solution?
Yes, that is exactly how I built it. I've always done my own websites. That's just something I always wanted to do. I was like, I can figure this out. So I was figured out my own websites. And then that led to doing some little like coding script things. Like when it was still called Twitter, I built some little Twitter bots and automation tools. And I kept going and I thought, oh, I could use this code script stuff to help automate my business. And as a freelancer, I had a lot of assignments coming in. So I was like, there's got to be a way to automate some of this. There's no reason I should have to take all these extra steps. So I started working and I used the Asana API and then Airtable and QuickBooks and third-party code tools. The one I was using mostly was make.com. And I put together this system that when I marked an assignment as complete, it would automatically match to a Airtable with all my clients and their rates, and then would put the invoice together. And then the end of the month, I'd just go send them all. But then QuickBooks would change their API or Make would do an upgrade and everything was always breaking. It's like I'm spending over $100 a month between all these apps. It doesn't really work the way I want. There's got to be a better way. So I went out there, started doing all this research, and there were some things that had part of what I wanted to do and other parts of what I wanted to do, but there was no single platform where I could just go automate my invoices based on my to-do list as a freelancer. So about a year and 5 months ago, it was right around New Year's, I sat down and I said, Chat GPT, here's what I want to build. And I gave it a list of all the details and the features that I wanted to include. And I had it help me outline my development process. And I started coding. I built it in Python using Django, which is like a backend framework for Python. And I built it. I started making it so I could log in and out. And then I made it so I could create clients and save a client list. That's the core of how everybody who uses the app starts, is you add your clients. And then you can add assignments, which every assignment has to tie to a client because otherwise the invoices don't know how to charge then or where to send. And whenever I mark something as completed, it then starts to automatically build out an invoice for that client. And at the end of the month, I've set it up and I'm actually building more features on now. But that was the core of what I wanted to do to start. I started work on, it's not going to be quite a QuickBooks killer, but it's definitely a QuickBooks competitor. I found a vendor that will allow users to connect to their bank accounts and credit cards and download their data. So hopefully within another few months, you could do your accounting and invoicing all within the app.
That's got to be incredibly useful for all freelancers, anybody who works on projects of any kind,
Yeah.
really. How much coding experience did you bring to the table before starting this project?
I had never built something to this scale, but I had built things. Most of what I built prior was in PHP, which is what you use behind the scenes in WordPress. So I'd actually built full PHP sites. The first app I ever built that was a standalone app was called Kosher Fish. And it let you type in the name of the fish and you could find out if it was kosher or not. And everything else I built that came out of my own need. Like I was going to sushi restaurants and I only eat kosher fish. We strict kosher at home, but I'll eat kosher eligible fish out of the house, even if it's not a kosher restaurant. So I'd go to a sushi place and I'd see some kind of fish on the menu and be like, I don't know if this is kosher, but I'd try to Google it. And the results were always really tough to decipher because all these different rabbis have different opinions on things. But there were so many different Jewish websites. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it. So I got kosherfish.co and it's still out there. It's still running, plugging along. If you want to know if salmon is kosher, you can go ask it. For this app, I thought I really want to spread my wings a little.
I'm curious because you mentioned that you used AI to help with the development plan. How much coding do you have to know? How much can you rely on AI right now?
So if you have zero coding knowledge, if somebody put a very simple HTML file in front of you of a single web page and looking at it, your eyes glaze over and you feel like it's Greek or Russian and this is crazy, I can't do this. You're probably still going to feel that way with AI on your side. You do need to be able to look at the code, understand what it does, but the AI can help you learn as you go. So I already knew HTML inside out from my old web development days. I actually built my first HTML websites in high school. If you remember GeoCities, on my first website I ever built, I was 16. I'd go to the computer lab because I was a cool kid during my off periods in high school. And I built a fan website for The Rock because I thought he was the greatest thing on earth and everyone else needed to know that. That was my first HTML web page, was on The Rock fan page in high school. But that taught me something, right? He never reached out. He never thanked me. I did see him once when I went to down in Denver. I got to see him lay the smack down. Les never thanked me personally. He should have. A lot of it builds. So when you're talking about building an app or coding to solve your problem, you have to look at the scale of what you're trying to solve. You have to look at your knowledge, your ability to think logically through the problem, and how you would solve it with code, and then what kind of code or tools you would need to execute it. Easier said than done in a lot of ways. And that's again where AI though can come back and be handy again. So like I knew how to do, let's say, A, B, and C with Python, but I didn't know how to do X, Y, and Z. But I knew Python. So that's where I could say to ChatGPT, I have this thing that I built with Python. I even copy and paste my code in. Like, here's my settings.py file. I need to do this new feature. How should I build that out? And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, but it helps a lot with the thought process. And it actually can create like good code for you, but it can also create really crappy code for you. So that's where you have to really know what you're doing. If I put in a mistake, it can help me find it. It can help me explore and plan. So it's almost like a second brain in some ways. It's like I tell it, sometimes you're my senior developer, I need this. Sometimes I say, you're my junior developer, I need this, depending on the level of complexity I'm trying to do. And by giving it that kind of job, I find it does do a better job answering my query the way I want. So the more details I can give it, the better response I'll get.
I see. What's next in terms of using AI for freelancing or, in your case, coding too? Is there something exciting that's coming down the road?
I love it. Yeah, as a freelancer, I definitely have a lot of friends who have lost a lot of clients. I've lost a lot of clients because of AI, also because of Google changes. Things happen in the market that change our business opportunities. And the way I look at AI is the way I look at spreadsheets for accountants when they came out. If you go back 40 years, 50 years, accountants would do everything on like paper spreadsheets. That's why they got the name. There were these big pieces of paper with a grid, and they would do all the accounting by hand, and they'd use a 10-key calculator, and that was it. And then this thing came out called Microsoft Excel, or actually it was probably Lotus Sheets or something. And all the accountants were like, oh my goodness, we're all going to lose our jobs. And a handful did, but the ones who learned how to use it were able to do their jobs better, faster, more accurately, higher volume. That's the way I look at AI. It's like that next iteration. It's like a calculator for words, but now it's becoming a calculator for image creation and videos and a lot more. But for the longest while, I've been thinking of it as a calculator for words. So if I type in what I want, it will calculate the best result for me. By knowing how to use it well, I can do my job better and faster. But I also want to be careful I'm not cheating on my homework, as I call it. I don't just say, AI, write this article for me, because it could, but it wouldn't be as good. And we know it makes mistakes. We call it hallucinating in the industry when they make things up. And they do. They hallucinate a lot, right? AI, if you ask it questions, eventually it will tell you something wrong. And then if you tell it's wrong, it'll double down. It'll be like, no, I'm right. You're wrong, human. So we know they're not perfect. So it's finding that right balance and how to use it to improve what you do without just cheating, I think, is the key, without messing up.
And you said that there are some new features that you're building into Freelancer Dashboard. What's coming down the pipe back?
Yeah. So number one, all the accounting stuff. It's a big undertaking. I have a lot of accounting experience, corporate accounting. So I know how this stuff works, which is helpful when doing the code. Like I have to know the concept of how it's going to work. Yeah. So the accounting stuff is going to be pretty detailed. Chart of accounts, importing transactions, categorizing transactions. Actually, I want to build in a report so users can click a button and have a PDF pop up that gives them everything they need to fill out their Schedule C if they are filing their taxes that way, or to fill out a K1 and 1120S if you're an S Corp. So I want to solve all my problems. I want to make it so it's as easy as possible to do your accounting and automate as much of that as you can and get your taxes prepped and have basic reports. The next thing I want to work on after that, which I have to give a shout out to Steve again. We talked about this one a little while ago, is payments. So right now I have a few ways you can put something on your invoice, pay me by PayPal here or pay me by Venmo here, but there's not a fully integrated payment system. That is a tricky beast. Payment laws are very complex, and this would be essentially enabling peer-to-peer business-to-business payments, B2B payments. So because it's not just paying me, it's me facilitating paying one to another, a whole nother set of regulations starts to apply. And that because of that, it's difficult to find a good vendor who's cost effective and would work with someone my size as a startup. If I had $1 million from some angel investor, I could use any of them to be fine. But because I'm bootstrapping it, I'm doing it all myself. I'm not going to put thousands of dollars a month out there for a payment feature that I don't know how it's going to be used yet. That's why I'm starting with the accounting and then going to payments next.